The Twilight Garage podcast is brought to you by The Red Onion, the Bay Area's finest hamburgers, located at 11900 San Pablo Avenue in El Chorrito. Tell them Twilight Garage sent you.
Twilighters! So glad you are joining us here yet again, sharing your time, which of course is your life. Want to thank our guests recently, the great Stoner Van Houten, who we have much love for. I'll put old DR on the scene, put us on the set. As we say here, it's all about love. It's all about the case. Speaking of the big case, my fine co-host, he's at location on the Michaela Garrett case, handling that. And then when he has moments with breaks in that, he's putting down chapters and revisions in his wonderful upcoming referential behemoth known as No Sense Makes Sense. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Going to want to get yourself a hard copy. As always, we're here in the Peas and Hall section of the collection. Want to join you, but we can't, so let's do it here live via satellite. Shall we, Casey Fields?
Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for showing up for another episode of Twilight Garage. Happy to be there with my good friends, producer Alex and David Rogerson. Love you guys dearly.
Collectively known as the Brothership Connection. Men of God putting it down. So this is interesting, doing this via Zoom, but I'm going to try not to yell. I realized when the dream came true, which is the beginning of unity in this milieu of research. We had the easiest and most wonderful connection naturally happen. Our dear friend Stoner was on for a special response to our dear friend James Dawson coming on and speaking about some of the Helter Skelter crime scene is laid out by Vincent Bugliosi. So we'll start with that for a second before we move on to the main topic today, which is going to be something our dear friend, again, Peas and Hall Press, Mr. George Stimson, has really hipped me, David Rogerson, to a few years ago. So I love speaking to George. He will very casually drop some just incredible nuggets. He was kind of chuckling in his George way, very self-assured, cool chuckle. And he says, David, I noticed you're interested in the Bernard Crowe situation. And I said, yeah, very much so. I think it was very pivotal. I find him a fascinating character. I'm not buying that there wasn't a previous relationship. I think Charlie's actions were very brave and bold, if not heroic. I think he made a strong stance, but I think there was more to it. And so he laughed and suggested that I check out his testimony that's available. I believe it was Cielo Drive Audio Archives. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's just raise a fine cup of McLaughlin Ethiopian coffee to our dear friend, Mr. Bo, as he goes by Emerson with the Cielo Drive Audio. George tipped me to that. I found Crowe's character to be just wonderful. We'll get into that in a second. Casey, can you kick us back off a little bit with what we were talking about on the crime scene before we pivot back into Crowe, which for me was very interesting. That Stoner brought up someone who I feel in research is a friend, Mr. Brian Davis's show that he co-hosted with Tana. The whole concept that the killing of Stephen Parent initially doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a
Yeah.
lot of questions about that, which we'll get into. But the reason for me to question a lot of that and revisit that is, why would these things not have been brought up by the defense during the natural course of the trial that the prosecution presented? Because during the prosecution, there was a certain amount of defense.
Yeah.
So my question being, which I'd love to talk to Brian Davis about, again, it's a fantasy camp thing. It's like fantasy football, right? Brian Davis, in my deepest of fantasies, did the decision to mount no defense happen later? Is that why we didn't ever talk about Stephen Parent? Because apparently his blood timeline and blood maps that Stoner brought up, apparently that show was raising an incredible amount of questions with a great deal of insight. So I'd love to ask him about that, because that was a wonderful point. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Had you known about that previously, Casey? Because it seemed like you were well versed in that logic.
Yeah, that's a alternate theory that's been bounced around for probably the last 5 years now. I'm starting to lean that direction. I'm actually starting to believe that probably was the case. He was probably the last one killed.
Wow.
A lot of it is based upon Steve seeming to be in a rush to get out of there.
So
And
does that answer the because for me, if he's saying halt and the guy's like, hey, I won't say anything, it has a defensive wound, why the guardrail? Why the damage to the Rambler? Yeah. So, like you say,
now to be fair,
well, hold up 1 sec. I'm sorry. When you're clarifying to say, I'm yelling again, that Stephen Parent was in a hurry to get out of there, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that Steve was on his way out and heard some arguing or something going on inside the main house.
Okay.
And popped his head around the corner.
I was like,
see
oh,
what was going on. And
okay.
I think that what happened was Linda was outside keeping watch.
And gawking. Do you think she was out there like, oh my God, macaque?
Yeah. Okay. And I think that he probably went and jumped in his car to try to get the hell out of there. And
yeah, whatever the fuck this is, I can call the police elsewhere. Okay.
And Linda, I think, reached into the car and cut his hand, cut his watch right off of his wrist. And I think she yelled to Tex, and Tex came out and shot him.
Okay, so here's where I want to pause. That makes sense. But what the standard issue Helter Skelter narrative is, we've all agreed that some of this is plausible and most of it makes a good deal of sense, minus the text entry, minus some of the great cliche dialogue. But this would line up with the defense not being mounted. That decision, I feel, was made later.
Yeah.
Because clearly Kasabian was involved and they would have torn her testimony apart. Keneric would have taken that apart instead of just constantly interrupting and annoying the court. He would have actually had a case. Yeah. But I think they just decided to not mount a defense later. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the group of defense attorneys reasoning and how they handled the end of that case is very interesting. I think that some of them were doing the best job they could, like Paul Fitzgerald.
When you said that, that's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, others I think were co-opted or I don't know, maybe even working on the other side. Like, for example, Richard Caballero used to work in the district attorney's office. and hadn't been a public offender very long when he became Susan Atkins' defense attorney.
And to that end, I was about to suggest that you're not going to see interviews, period, with Day Shin
Yeah.
or Richard Caballero.
Yep.
But Paul Fitzgerald's final interviews that I've seen, I don't know if he did any later, but that one where it looks like he's maybe in the Embarcadero Center in a legal office, right?
Yeah.
That was very sincere. Clearly, there was chemistry between Linda and himself, right?
Yep.
I'm not saying there was hanky-panky, but there were some feelings there. I think there were some other people that exhibited some sympathy for her. Interestingly, like the authors whose name will come to me, the lady, the great, she's a screenplay writer with her husband. She was starting to do a book, brought them the dresses from San Francisco for Kasabian to wear at the trial. Her name will come to me, but she was an author and had a great yellow Camaro, I believe, right? Cool broad. So anyway, these things weren't moral. Day Shin, Caballero.
I mean, like for Ronald Hughes, for example, had never tried a case before.
And he got involved in this whole thing earlier than the derailed Leslie Van Houten situation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, could you explain that for our lovely Twilighters here, please?
Yeah. Originally, Ronald Hughes was helping out Charlie, somehow a friend of the family. I don't know what the connection was. And then eventually he became, Leslie's attorney. And until he unfortunately passed away, and which led to Leslie getting another trial in 1978, I believe.
And, incredibly, some people don't understand. Leslie was free for some time.
Yeah, about 9 months.
Can you imagine, right? You've been through the ride, okay? You did what you did. You had your teenage wild years. You're in your 20s. We are one, all is none. But then you're in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And you look around you. And for me, I always wonder, Leslie was smart, but she saw Patty get down. Okay.
Yeah.
She must have seen Susan kind of be a punk. She's running around with ripped up, bloody feet. Not much better than Linda, screaming her head off, being a loser. Probably holding Sharon Tate down by the throat. She probably was taunting Sharon Tate, but hey, man, based on her feet being held and her throat being held, as we talked about with James Dawson recently, Gentleman Guillaume from Argentina, our dear friend, there was involvement, but it wasn't near as much as she made out. They weren't the tough girls they acted themselves out to be. But then they brought the whole house of cards down. If the bitch had just shut the fuck up, if you think about them trying to crack Helter Skelter, if they hadn't been such impetuous dipshits in Death Valley, you got Atois, animals, tree, water, air, or whatever the fuck it is, right? All the way alive. I like All the Way Alive. That sounds more punk rock skateboard to me. Anyway, so you've got the whole Atois thing blossoming. We're going to save the ecology. Why were they blocking the fucking road off with a fucking earth mover, bro?
Yeah.
Because you were spinning donuts and playing fucking war games on an ancient lake bed. You touched the thing. The minimum motorcycle track on a fucking lake bed of that fucking nature is tens of thousands of years. That's the half-life of your fucking egress, sir.
Yeah.
And you're chopping roads up. You're just like making a road network because these arrogant fuckers, the family who we love, showed the fuck up in Death Valley like no one existed. Like they were fucking Columbus and fucking discovered the place. They come into a house. People have been there for decades. You're living under literally somebody's roof that they hauled the fuck up there, and you're just acting like you're just like nobody's there. Like you're not the weird newcomer standing out like rat shit in the rice. So they bring the thing on themselves. Stupid Susan runs her mouth. Poor Leslie Van Houten's life gets ruined. All these people's lives gets ruined, right? The murder victims, whatever, their families, everything is foreshortened. And then all of a sudden she looks over and it's fucking Susan's fault, who's trying to suck up to her for years. Lynn did what Lynn did, right?
Yeah.
So Van Houten's got feminism and a better fucking lawyer, better legal team, more sympathy.
Hey, think about this real quick, though.
Yeah. But before we say that real quick, she just popped out after all that. The big windup is she has this big thing and then she pops out a totally different fucking person. How old was she when she was temporarily free, brother?
I think she was like in her late 20s, but here's the part that blows me away.
Right, here we go.
While she was out, she went to an award show with John Waters.
Exactly. They became close very early.
So you got like Kasabian that's out, but then in jail you have Lynn at the time, you have Susan, Pat, Tex, Grogan still at that point,
Charlie
Bruce Davis. Yeah. And they're probably getting word in prison that here Leslie is at this award show.
Well, and you know, every television camera, because it's an international story. And hey, I don't want to be a prick or anything because, hey, John Michael Jones, myself, these other people who've had very fortunate relationships with people at the epicenter of these stories have their own takeaways, and sometimes they're emotional and it looks weird. Okay. So I'm not discounting John Waters or his motives or his personal feelings, but you think about it, what an exciting thing for Leslie. Again, we just outlined all this, right? She's free for 9 months. She winds up at like the Academy Awards, is sitting there in God knows what kind of an evening dress.
Yeah. There's pictures of her.
Right. But hold up. Fucking John Waters, you pimp. What a great way to get some fucking attention. If you didn't win the Academy Award, you might as well have just fucking slapped Chris Rock that year. Oh, you want to talk about a coup? That was about as funky, distasteful, and weird is when Marlon Brando brought the Native American activist up.
Yeah.
You know, instead of accepting my award, I'm going to have this person come and chastise you. Fucking. That's just like Quentin Tarantino taking the Manson murder story, throwing it in his fucked up blender.
Yeah.
That's just cultural appropriation. There's nothing more American. There's nothing more disgusting and fucking awesome at the same time.
People don't realize how upset people in this community are about that movie. I think it's great.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Well, okay. I don't want to jaybird my alligator self, okay? Alligator, my jaybird, whichever you want to prefer. But one of the times I'd spent some time with Len, it came up. And I'd seen it once in passing, and I was entertained by it. I saw what they did. They took the Clayton Moore story.
Yeah.
They folded all these mythos in. And I think what was failed to be understood by a lot of these people in this community, it wasn't a documentary.
No.
They weren't fleshing out a true story. It wasn't the rebuttal to Helter Skelter. It was a grindhouse film about the summer of '69, people's weird, hazed out, iconic, distorted memories And it's a result of people like in the 2020s. Wasn't it even last year that Quincy Jones was talking about them
Yep.
cutting Sharon Tate's baby Paul out, swinging it by the umbilical cord, and he attributed that to Susan Atkins?
Yep.
Like, that is an example of why the Hollywood fairy tale that he spun was exactly that. I thought it was a great piece of fictional work. Dude, who hasn't wanted to fucking throw a flame on creepy Susan Atkins? And he had her all dirty. He had her all dirty and barefoot, all in the back of it. And she would say the most reprehensible shit, the character, in the back of Johnny Schwartz's car. Like, yeah, check out my mustache. She was so fucking feral. And he just lit her up with a fucking flamethrower. That was beautiful. That was grindhouse as fuck. Right? And then Lynn was like, well, God bless her. She didn't appreciate it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, got it. Well, to my wife's credit, who's totally gorgeous and amazing and supports my lifestyle 100%. I'm flying back first class, right? I got this really nice screen. Everything's cool. What do they have on there? The film, right? The QT film. Right after we had this conversation. So I'm watching it. It was awesome, dude. Grogan getting just, because he was a composite character as well.
Yeah.
And these characters, it was disgusting. It was reprehensible. The kid's trying to get out of there, gets cut. Linda Kasabian doesn't suffer a lick other than being the piece of shit she set out to be.
Tarantino paid Jacobson a grip of money in the making of that. A lot of misinformation he got from Jacobson.
And could you talk a little more about that? Because I've heard that oft rumored. Is that true?
He wrote. What's interesting is Tarantino wrote the book after he filmed the movie.
That was very interesting to me. Yeah, because again, it had that kind of fucking impact with every community. This community, other movie communities, the martial arts community. What do you mean Bruce Lee was a fraud? It's like, well, the guy wasn't necessarily a fraud, but it's like, come on, dude. Like,
yeah, and even more so than the film, the star of the book is Ruth Ann Morehouse.
Dude, okay, can I have a little bit of an aside here? I don't want to go all talk story, bro, on you, but I have a brother-in-law I don't really get along with, and he's like this squiggly hair, red hair dude from New York, wears a beard, whatever, dude. Doesn't exercise his being an uncle to my daughter, so I'm not real fond of the dude. But he's over here in Hollywood, and we got to talking about how film is made, and I've totally digressed and just gotten all pissed off about my brother-in-law. And what I was starting to talk about was Tarantino's personality, because he did a few episodes of a wonderful fucking show. To my brother-in-law's credit, why I'm mad, he introduced my wife and I. How are we not close? I don't know. But he was a wonderful filmmaker. This guy, my brother-in-law, gets down behind the camera. Wonderful line producer. He did a show called Iconoclasts. It was through an Australian media company, which is how I met my wife. They shot me for one of the episodes. Well, they did QT, right? So they would take two people and put them together, these iconoclastic people, great icons, great people, but they wouldn't normally be together. Okay. Yeah. So they got a hold of Tarantino and they just asked him straight out, hey man, who would you want to be in a show with? Who would you feel is your equal? Who would be exciting? Instead of it being an interesting filmmaker or some writer or maybe a humanitarian activist that you wouldn't expect he'd be into, or just getting Sacha Baron Cohen on there to be crazy, right? As another character. Who the fuck does he pick? Motherfucking Fiona Apple.
Oh, wow.
Okay, let me ask our audience here. Both of you fuckers. Chrissy. Chrissy, you're out there. Help us, Chrissy. Who is Fiona Apple, bro?
Yep.
I don't know who Fiona Apple is. Like, what the fuck is that? Is it food? I don't know, bro.
She's a girl that I used to save her on the cover of Rolling Stone back in the 90s.
Yeah, is it a sex act? It's like listening to Kid Rock now. Yo, I got Matchbox 20 money. And I'm like, did he have a 20 in a Matchbox? Was it $20 worth of weed and a match? Like, what's a $20? What's a Matchbox 20? And then someone had to explain to me what Matchbox 20 was. Watch your fucking references, people. They get fucking dated, bro. So he brings them together. Why? So QT can sniff her panties. It's the most disgusting fucking display. He's like, yeah, Fiona. Yeah. He comes off like fucking Randy Savage. Yeah, sister. Let me tell you about yourself. I'm a great man. You're going to want to come back to my place, sister. Yeah, sister. It's like, he was on amyl nitrate or something. Would you hit the locker room? He's on fucking poppers. Yeah, brother, it's a gay locker room kind of situation. Gonna need to get the neck face bullshit. Really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable, right? So I'm like, what the fuck? My brother-in-law told me some shit about that guy, like made my mother fucking skin crawl, homie. So I'm back over here trying to dismiss all this shit and explain to Lynn creepy filmmaking, why it has its own strata of appropriateness, why white power rock and roll has a place in society and actually may help things, because people can say crazy shit like in gangster rap. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to throw the N word out there and shoot black people, bro. Like, I think there's like a campaign now, like discouraging people from it. I don't know. I've been hearing something about it. I don't know. Anyway, so we have outlets, man. Just like this case, just like anything. I think people should be able to say crazy shit as a form of, it's like squeezing a zit, dude. The skin is not so sacred that you can't free up the pore. Yeah.
It's worth the squeeze.
I'm just saying, hometown. So I want to thank you for being the main squeeze here, helping us elucidate a lot of these micro points that aren't happening elsewhere, Casey. You don't have the energy to tune in for 5.5 hours of Stoner's Daily Show for that 15 minutes of absolute Manson.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. So if you don't have the time, you can tune in with us and hang out. We're trying to be the benchmark. What I hope happens out here, this is my sincere desire. Brian Davis, baby, get at us. We love you, man. Hey, if we wind up fighting and talking shit, that's fine. Other than that, we have a lot of viewers out there with great knowledge. Could you please make yourselves available? We'd love to talk to you about these micro points and these different things. We're going to come back with just a kiss of this Brian Davis theory, which I am very excited about. Then we're going to bounce into Bernard Crowe, something that is just one of the most incredible stories of a lifetime, just within the story we have here. Please check out Peas and Hall Press. As always, Lynette Alice Fromey and our dear co-host, Casey Fields. I want to thank you for defending, as God and every child of God should do, those weaker than us, taking up the cause of the fucking unspeakable of these young girls and this Michaela Garrett situation and the book you're doing. We don't mind sacrificing you for that, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Love you. Twilight Times.